It was a morning that began like any other at the military base in southern Nevada, a place where discipline ruled every breath and silence carried more weight than words, where orders were followed without hesitation and respect for rank was carved deep into every soldier's soul. But that morning, something was about to happen that no one would ever forget, something that would shake the very foundation of the base and forever change the way people looked at courage, pride, and dignity. For in the middle of the training grounds stood Lieutenant Emily Carter, a young officer barely 26, her boots covered in dust, her uniform pressed perfectly, her eyes sharp with focus and fire. She was known for her calm under pressure and her ability to lead men twice her age through chaos. But she was also known for something else, something that not everyone admired. Her refusal to bow down to arrogance masked as authority, and that trait would soon bring her face to face with a storm she could never have imagined. As the sun rose higher and the drills began, Colonel Richard Halvorsen, a man in his late 50s with decades of command behind him and a reputation for cruelty that sent shivers down the spine of every new recruit, walked across the yard, his shadow falling over the young officers like a dark omen. He had served in wars across continents and had earned medals, but behind those medals was a man whose temper knew no mercy and whose ego demanded submission. And on that day, when he found Emily leading a tactical simulation without his prior notice, something inside him snapped. His boots struck the ground hard as he approached her, his voice slicing through the air like a whip, asking who had authorized her to make decisions without his approval. Emily, standing tall, her jaw tight but her tone respectful, replied that she had been following the updated command protocol. But her words only fueled his rage, for no reason other than the fact that she had spoken back in front of others. He stepped forward, inches away from her face, and before anyone could react, he grabbed her by the hair, pulling her head back as gasps filled the yard. The silence that followed was suffocating. Every soldier froze. No one dared move, for they all knew what defying a colonel could cost. But Emily did not flinch. Her heart pounded but her eyes did not waver. She looked straight into his eyes, and in that burning second, something unbreakable came alive inside her. Slowly she reached up, gripped his wrist, and with calm precision, twisted it off her head, forcing him to release his hold. The pain in his eyes was not physical. It was the shock of defiance, the disbelief that anyone would dare stand up to him. But Emily wasn't done. She stepped back, adjusted her cap, and in a voice steady as steel, said, "Sir, this uniform commands respect, not fear, and no rank justifies humiliation." Her words echoed across the field, bouncing off the walls of the barracks, hitting every heart that had ever stayed silent under abuse of power. For a moment, no one breathed, and then, slowly, like a wave, soldiers began to lower their rifles, their stance shifting as if something sacred had just been restored. The colonel's face turned pale with fury, but before he could speak, Major Dawson, the second in command and a man known for fairness, stepped forward, his tone calm yet firm, reminding the colonel that physical assault on an officer was not only against regulation but a stain on the honor of the service itself. The colonel's rage was visible in every twitch of his face, but the eyes around him, hundreds of them, were no longer afraid. They were awake, and for the first time in years, his authority felt smaller than the silence around him. Emily turned to the troops, her voice now softer but commanding, telling them to continue the drill, and they obeyed, not because of fear, but because of respect. Word spread across the base like wildfire. From the mess hall to the communication tents, everyone spoke of the moment the young lieutenant had stood against tyranny. Some whispered in disbelief, others with pride, and while the colonel locked himself in his office, Reports started reaching the headquarters. An inquiry was launched quietly but swiftly. The following week, a panel of high-ranking officers arrived, unannounced, their presence sending ripples through the base. During the hearing, testimonies were taken, and even those who had once feared the colonel now spoke the truth. The footage from the training ground cameras sealed his fate, and the same hands that once pinned medals to his chest now signed his discharge papers. Emily was summoned to headquarters not to be questioned, but to be commended. The general himself met her, his expression a mixture of sternness and respect, telling her that true discipline was not in silence, but in integrity, and that her courage had restored the meaning of leadership. When she returned to the base weeks later, the same soldiers who once looked at her as a junior officer now stood straighter in her presence, saluting not out of habit but out of honor. The air at the base had changed. Respect had returned where fear once lived, and though she never spoke about that incident again, its echo remained in every corner of the grounds. In every whispered story told to new recruits, they would point to her quarters and say, "That's where she lived. The woman who taught us what real strength looks like." Years passed. Emily rose through the ranks, leading missions that brought glory and peace, her reputation reaching beyond borders. Yet she always remembered that one morning when everything changed, when she stood alone before power and refused to bow. And in that moment of stillness after the storm, she learned that courage is not the absence of fear but the defiance of it. And somewhere in the long halls of memory, the base still stood, proud and quiet, forever marked by the day a colonel grabbed her by the hair, and she answered not with weakness, but with strength that silenced an entire army and awakened the soul of a nation.